Welcome to our talk about The Handmaid's Tale, a cultural phenomenon introduction. What if fiction isn't just a warning, but a mirror? In today's world, the line between fiction and reality seems more blurred than ever. Few stories capture this eerie overlap, quite like The Handmaid's Tale. What started as a speculative novel in 1985 became a global cultural symbol, a dystopian nightmare that resonates far too closely with the headlines of today. This isn't just a story. It's a wake-up call. A haunting, prophetic tale of what happens when power goes unchecked, when rights are stripped, and when voices are silenced. Whether you're a longtime fan or hearing about Gilead for the first time, what follows is more than a recap. It's a journey through how The Handmaid's Tale became a reflection of our times, our fears, and perhaps our future. Chapter 1: Origins and Inspiration. The world that birthed Gilead. Margaret Atwood didn't invent the horrors of Gilead out of thin air. She once said that everything in her novel had historical precedent, and she meant it. From Puritan New England to 20th century totalitarian regimes, Atwood's fictional theocracy is grounded in real-life policies and practices. Forced childbearing, arranged marriages, censorship, dress codes, none are new. She drew from events like the Salem witch trials, Nazi Germany's eugenics programs, and the rise of religious fundamentalism around the globe. What makes Atwood's story so chilling is not its fiction, but its possibility. When she wrote the book, she was reacting to the political climate of the 1980s, a time of rising conservatism, backlash against feminism, and growing control over women's reproductive rights. Fast forward to today, and the world of Gilead feels more like a twisted documentary than dystopian fiction. Chapter 2: The Hulu Adaptation, breathing new life into an old warning. In 2017, Hulu brought The Handmaid's Tale to life on screen, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect or more disturbing. Starring Elizabeth Moss as June Osborne, the series expanded upon Atwood's novel, exploring not just the world of Gilead, but the people resisting it. It was visceral, it was raw, and it struck a nerve. The show arrived amid rising tensions in the U.S. over immigration bans, attacks on women's health care, and political polarization. Suddenly, fiction and reality were dancing in lockstep. The red cloaks and white bonnets of the handmaids became instantly iconic, used not only for dramatic effect in the show, but adopted in real-world protests across the globe. Viewers weren't just watching a TV show, they were seeing a warning unfold. Chapter 3: The Cast and Characters, Faces of Fear and Resistance. Elizabeth Moss' portrayal of June was nothing short of extraordinary, a woman broken, but unyielding, vulnerable, yet defiant. Her transformation from passive victim to active resistor was the heartbeat of the show. But she wasn't alone. Serena Joy, portrayed by Yvonne Strahovski, was a chilling contradiction. The architect of Gilead, who also became its prisoner. Then there's Aunt Lydia, played with frightening brilliance by Endowed, a character both monstrous and tragically human. Nick, Luke, Moira, and Commander Lawrence each represented different facets of survival, complicity, and rebellion. And of course, there was Emily, whose return in the final season reminded us that the battle against tyranny never truly ends. The show wasn't afraid to show complexity. Heroes faltered. Villains showed remorse. And everyone paid a price. Chapter 4, Symbolism and Real-World Protests, Fiction Bleeds into Reality. When protesters showed up at U.S. state houses, dressed as handmaids, the world took notice. These silent demonstrations, cloaked in crimson, were hauntingly powerful. They said, without words, what millions felt. That women's autonomy was under threat. The symbolism became so widespread that it began appearing internationally. From Argentina to Ireland, anywhere reproductive rights were being debated. The imagery of the Handmaid's Tale became more than just TV props. They were protest uniforms, visual shorthand for oppression. This crossover, from screen to street, gave the story new life. It wasn't just entertainment. It was empowerment. A rallying cry wrapped in a bonnet. Chapter 5, Final Season and Emotional Closure, the End of Gilead's Reign. Season 6 was the culmination of years of suffering, resistance, and hope. June's story came full circle. Not because she defeated Gilead entirely, but because she never gave up. She found her daughter, Nicole. She reconnected with Moira. She forgave herself. And she began to heal. Gilead may still have existed, but June had reclaimed her voice. Emily's surprise return in the finale was a poetic nod to those who fought in the shadows, reminding viewers that every act of resistance counts, even the quiet ones. The finale was not a grand victory, but a deeply personal one. It focused on remembrance, honoring the fallen and capturing stories before they fade. The war wasn't over, but neither was hope. Chapter 6, Why It Resonates Today, The Alarming Parallels. In 2022, when the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, the internet exploded with comparisons to The Handmaid's Tale. And rightly so. The fear that women's bodies could be legislated by the state was no longer dystopian fantasy. It was legal precedent. The echoes of Gilead were everywhere. Authoritarianism, censorship, gender oppression. These aren't relics of fiction, but realities of our time. Around the world, women are still forced into marriages, denied education, and punished for resisting patriarchy. The show resonated because it held a mirror to all of it and dared to say, this is not okay. It was a reminder that dystopias don't arrive overnight. They creep in, cloaked in tradition, in faith, in law, and the only way to stop them is to stay alert. Chapter 7, The Future, the Testaments and What Comes Next. Margaret Atwood wasn't finished with Gilead, and neither was Hulu. The Testaments, her 2019 sequel, set 15 years after *The Handmaids. Tale star. And rightly so. The fear that women's bodies could be legislated by the state was no longer dystopian fantasy, it was legal precedent. The echoes of Gilead were everywhere. Authoritarianism, censorship, gender oppression, these aren't relics of fiction, but realities of our time. Around the world, women are still forced into marriages, denied education, and punished for resisting patriarchy. The show resonated because it held a mirror to all of it and dared to say, this is not okay. It was a reminder that dystopias don't arrive overnight. They creep in, cloaked in tradition, in faith, in law, and the only way to stop them is to stay alert. Chapter 7, the future, the testaments, and what comes next. Margaret Atwood wasn't finished with Gilead, and neither was Hulu. The Testaments, her 2019 sequel, set 15 years after The Handmaid's Tale, is already being adapted for TV. It promises to explore the world after June through the eyes of three women: Aunt Lydia, Agnes, June's daughter raised in Gilead, and Daisy, a Canadian teenager linked to the resistance. This shift in perspective opens the door to new stories, new battles, and new voices. The Testaments won't just continue the legacy of The Handmaid's Tale, it will reframe it. It asks, what does resistance look like when the world has moved on? What happens after the headlines fade? And who tells the stories when the original voices are gone? Conclusion: The Handmaid's Tale, a story that refuses to be silenced long after the credits roll. The echoes of Gilead remain. The Handmaid's Tale isn't just a series, it's a symbol of resistance, of survival, of warning. Its strength lies not only in its story, but in its willingness to confront uncomfortable truths. As viewers, we were not just entertained, we were challenged to think, to act, to care. And as the world continues to evolve, perhaps the greatest legacy of The Handmaid's Tale is its demand that we never stop questioning the systems we live in. Because dystopias don't begin with violence, they begin with silence. And silence, as June taught us, is something we can no longer afford. The end.